So Anna, that brings us on to our next topic, which is arguably the biggest key learning that we've come to know from the oil trial site visits, being cultural change. And this has been impacting both internally at organisation level, but also from the family side. If we focus on fully cultural change on organisations at the moment, there's a few key aspects that from the conversations that we've been having with some of our member organisations, and there are some findings online from the panel discussion at our last Managers Network meeting. We're talking about things such as having conversations about money and a sale as such, although we're trying not to use that word sale, but it unfortunately is a conversation that needs to be had. So that cultural change in thinking and how that's going to happen from a service delivery side of things with the families for a practitioner. We're also talking about customer relationship management, marketing yourself both above and below the line, website change, communication, like we've already spoken about today. So, but to speak more about organisations that aren't involved in the Barwon trial site, by way of cultural change, have you started to pick up on certain things that they're doing internally with their organisation to get ready? Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of people are having regular team meetings, right from executive to professionals on the ground. Yep. Of course, professionals on the ground are the ones that are going to be having these conversations with families. So everyone being on board is critical, as we talked about earlier in the communication part. I mean, the shift from block funding to individualised funding has huge implications, of course, and presents challenges and opportunities. I mean, opportunities in terms of choice and control, which is fantastic, and implications, I guess, for ECI, early child intervention, has a lot of different components, and some of those haven't really been captured in an individualised funding model, and it's meant that some groups and programs, etc., have sort of dropped off. Obviously, groups can still be run if there's a number of children with the same needs that want that, but it's not semester-run groups, and that is actually quite a grieving process for professionals who have put their heart and soul into these groups and programs and really developed an emotional connection. And I guess there is some sort of a grieving process that has been happening and is happening now across the state about things that might look different under the NDIS, but at the same time there are a lot of things that the NDIS has brought, which is exciting. But that shift in itself from block funding to individualised funding means that we sort of need to start talking about money, and that can be really uncomfortable. I know from my background as a social worker, that was what I loved. That I never had to speak about money. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you think you're doing a great service. You're walking alongside families. You're seeing really good outcomes for those families and children, and you sort of get to walk away feeling good, and you haven't had to talk about money. I know that, though, for the rest of the world, the way that businesses work is goods and services, there's money involved. Exactly. And I come from more of a business and sporting background, so that conversation I'm quite familiar with. And so I think from the conversations that I've had with some of our service providers, especially at the Managers Network meeting last May, is the fact that we're fortunate enough that there's actually no monetary transaction. So there's no dollars being handed over, there's no credit card being swiped, and there's no cheque being written. It's as simple as signing an invoice, but it's the fact that there's the conversation that needs to lead up for that invoice to be presented and to be approved. So we need to try and, I suppose, remove the word sale and transaction, because that's not what it is. No. We know it's a service that's being provided, and we know that there is a serious value behind that service, and it's fantastic that we can provide that. So to try and remove the word sale, albeit tough, it's going to be something that needs to happen culturally, both internally in the organisations, and that links back into the communication process and the language that we're using to make sure all of our service practitioners are on the same point and delivering the same message. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. And also, if families want the best for their children, and if you know the value in what you're buying, you're going to pay for it. That's exactly right. And it's not like it's money coming out of their own pocket, but it is money that they are entitled to through the NDIS, and they need to know that what they're spending on is evidence-based and produces outcomes. And so that goes back to an internal conversation that you need to know what services you're actually delivering and what the value is in them, and then feeling comfortable to convey that to families. Yes, exactly right. Once you're able to convey that, it's easier to have those conversations. I think something that people can start doing now, which we did talk about at the Managers Network meeting, is that to start talking to families about everything you're doing, and to do as much as you can with the families, or really put capacity building at the core of your work in terms of
can you do this? The family can do a lot.
Yeah, exactly right.
But when you're talking about having to go back to the office and doing A, B, C, does the family know that you're doing that?
Correct.
And do they know the value in that? Because when money's involved and you start saying, oh, I'm going to go back to the office now to do A, B, and C, that's going to cost this much,
Correct.
and they're not aware that you did that before, that's where issues can start.
And that's when the questions will start to get
asked.
Because,
and already you should be practicing. I mean, it's a good way to practice to be transparent and to know, to have families empowered about what it is that you do. Yeah,
I think that's a really key point, and something that I also picked up on at the network meeting in May. So basically, for us to deliver as a service provider a 60-minute face-to-face, whether that's at a kindergarten or at an in-home environment, we know that there's a cost associated with me getting there. So there's travel. There's also the planning that goes in behind that, whether that be pre and post consultation, and that it all needs to be a transparent communication piece that gets put together to the family when you're presenting your plan to make sure they're on the same page. And you're exactly right. If we start to do that now, before full-scale rollout is upon us, the families will be a bit more understanding. They'll know exactly the value that goes into the service that they're receiving face-to-face and what's happening behind the scenes and the importance of it.
Yeah.
Because obviously the 60-minute consultation can't happen without that work behind the scenes.
Exactly, and I think that's been a big thing that people have said in the trial, particularly in the beginning stages, was that families were saying, but I've only seen you for an hour, so I'm only paying an hour, and weren't aware what else goes into service. Of course, when people are aware of what goes into service, you're more happy to fund that because again, it comes down to what the value is in it. But we've always just, block funding allows for a lot of flexibility, and another key thing is to really, as a professional, really think about those ad hoc conversations you're having across the room about a certain child, and perhaps those secondary consultations that aren't as formalised. All of those little bits you do here and there, take note of those, because in an NDIS world they'll need to be accounted for somewhere.
Yeah, that's really key.
Yeah.